What do you say, everybody? He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillispie, and we really appreciate you here as we talk about Alabama football and kind of the route that guys have taken from high school to college to the pros. I want to ask all of you that are watching on our Bama Insider YouTube channel, and we appreciate all of you guys. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. The growth has been absolutely amazing. We also appreciate the super chats. And for those of you that have downloaded the podcast, all you got to do is find the Bama Insider channel on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will continuously update it with new content, including shows like this. Andrew Bone is the recruiting expert for the Alabama rival site, Bama Insider. I'm Mick Gillispie. Last week, we had the showdown after a delay because of COVID, Alabama against the defending national champions, LSU, and it turned out to be a beatdown of epic proportion. And Bone, there were two guys in the game who were from the state of Louisiana and had a big impact on it. And I want you to talk about the first guy, Devontae Smith. How about the game? He had 3 touchdowns.
Man, every single week you're just amazed at what he can do, and dating back to his first season at Alabama when he had that unbelievable touchdown catch against Georgia in the national championship, and we know Alabama's had some great receivers, and I mean, heck, they had 2 first-round receivers on last year's team, and that's not to mention guys like Jalen Waddle, and plus Devontae Smith, and what an unbelievable offense that these guys have been able to play in and make big contributions, and Smitty is now the record holder for most touchdowns, receiving touchdowns in a career in the SEC. And, there's a lot of talk about him being a Heisman Trophy, not only a potential finalist, but potentially a favorite, after his performance. And, we're going to, see how he does over the course of the next 2 weekends against Arkansas and Florida. And maybe he gets that invite and, to New York and potentially wins it. Wouldn't that be something to see, a wide receiver win the Heisman Trophy? And, he's certainly a guy that could challenge. And, his recruitment was, was interesting because he gave an early commitment to Georgia. Many people, forget about that. Man, there was a couple of, interesting things that happened back in that 2017 recruiting class. I mean, from Jake Fromm making an early commitment to Alabama, and then, Kirby Smart ends up leaving. The kind of crazy, the domino effect. Kirby Smart leaves Alabama, becomes a head coach of Georgia. Jake Fromm ends up flipping from Alabama to Georgia, which opened up the door for Alabama to recruit Tua and Mac Jones, and ends up getting, they ended up getting both of those guys, but it also opened up the door for Smitty because Smitty had a really close relationship with Sam Petito, who was on the support staff at Georgia under Coach Rick. He was also from the same area as Smitty growing up, so he had a really close relationship with him. Well, Sam Petito ends up leaving when Mark Richt leaves Georgia. Fire, whatever it was. He ends up, ending up at Alabama. That was Sam Petito, and a lot of talk that Devontae Smith was going to end up at Alabama too because of that. Now, he took it all the way down to the end. It's kind of funny because he's a Louisiana kid, but throughout the entire recruitment, everybody just thought he was going to Alabama. I mean, all the way up until signing day, but LSU was certainly in it. I mean, LSU was a top 2 school for him. He really liked, the home state school a lot, but was really sold on Alabama throughout the entire process and held off all the way until signing day. There was 2 receivers in that signing class who everyone thought they were going to Alabama the whole time, but there was a little bit of nervousness those last few days before signing day, to make sure those guys were going to jump on board, and that was Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs. Alabama already had a commitment from Jerry Jeudy, another first-round wide receiver. So that it's really going to go down as one of the absolute best wide receiver classes of all time. Just the way that they performed in college, the way that the first round draft picks. I mean, it was certainly a special class on the offensive side of the ball. Not to mention Tua, also being in that class. And Najee. I mean, what an unbelievable group that was in 2017. Alex Leatherwood, Jedrick Wills. I mean, wow. I mean, what an unbelievable group that was. And we'll be talking about this, that recruiting class for several years to come.
Yeah, amazing too to see, a player from Louisiana with that kind of impact on Alabama. Another guy from Louisiana who had an impact on that football game was one of three guys that play for the Crimson Tide that are from Baton Rouge, and this guy felt like was injured last year. I think that had Alabama had a healthy linebacker in Dylan Moses a year ago, that team could have beaten LSU. But he's back, and he did a really nice job, and that defense is starting to pick up a lot of momentum in a win against his hometown team last week.
Yeah, I think last year's Alabama team was a special group. Many people just don't realize how good that team really was. I mean, so many people talk about LSU's team last year and how it's potentially the best team of all time, undefeated. Heisman Trophy winner in Joe Burrow, so many, NFL players. But, Alabama only lost to LSU by 5 points. I think they had a chance to win it. They didn't. They were missing a lot of key ingredients, on their team. I mean, not to mention, Dylan Moses, but, their kicker, Will Reichard, who's having a, Luke Groza award type year. He was out. I mean, they're missing their kicker. They're missing, multiple defensive players. Dylan Moses, Joshua McMillan, LeBrian Ray. I mean, it was a banged up team. I mean, that team was a special group, and I think really could have. If they would have been able to beat LSU, they would have been healthy. They would probably be talked about as one of the best teams of all time, for Alabama, not only at Alabama, but for the country. So, I mean, Dylan Moses being back healthy, kind of, making the play calls on defense, lining people up, telling people where to go. I think that's been, very, very crucial for Alabama this year. I mean, they've got a lot of young talent on that defense side of the ball, but you need some leaders out there. And that's what Alabama was missing, a little bit last year. They had, a lot of young guys that had to step up. You had freshmen and critical roles on the defensive side of the ball. Christian Harris was a true freshman last year. Shane Lee was the starting inside linebacker, and those guys are having to make the play calls. And now you have Moses back, Christian Harris having an unbelievable season. I think he's a semifinalist for the Butkus Award this year. He's having a great year. So you got a really, really strong defense this year to go along with that offense. But Dylan Moses coming out of high school. I mean, let me tell you something. When a kid gets really propped up when he's a, freshman, sophomore in high school, there's a lot of times that those kids just don't pan out. I've seen it so many times. I've covered, this is my 18th year of covering high school football recruiting, and I can't tell you the countless, kids that have been just so propped up and had so many offers when they were freshmen and sophomores, and by the time they were seniors, they were they'd kind of maxed out. They weren't as good once they got to college, or some of them. I've seen a lot of them even change positions once they get. They were the star quarterback as a true freshman, but then they end up going to college as a wide receiver or defensive back. This kid's going to be the best quarterback of all time, and it just doesn't ever happen like that. So to see Dylan Moses, his rise, and he was so publicized as a 8th grader. He was on ESPN the magazine, the cover of ESPN the magazine, after his 8th grade year. I mean, this guy hadn't even played high school football yet, but he had offers from Alabama and LSU. Those were the first two schools that offered him right after his 8th grade year. Can you believe that? Coming out of junior high school and not even playing a single down of high school football, and Alabama and LSU already want you to be a part of their program. It's unbelievable. And I remember seeing Dylan Moses at a camp. I think it was a Rivals camp. right before his freshman year, or maybe it was right after his freshman year, and thinking, man, this kid has all the tools. He looks the part, but at the same time, he was working out at wide receiver, and he was working out at cornerback. Those were the positions that he loved to play. Nobody was really sure how much bigger he was going to get, which position was he going to play once he got to college. From a physical standpoint, one of the most impressive kids I'd ever seen at that age, and gave an early commitment to LSU. Nobody was really surprised by that from Baton Rouge. Was a big LSU fan growing up. But then, Les Miles ends up getting fired. He's no longer there. Really kind of opened up the door for Moses, and kind of take a step back. Ends up leaving Baton Rouge, transferred to IMG Academy, played a senior season at IMG Academy, and the rest is history. Ends up going down. A lot of people thought he was going to end up back at LSU, but he ends up going to Alabama. I want to say it was maybe for the Mississippi State. It was either Mississippi State or for the Iron Bowl. I can't remember exactly which game it was, but he was back in Tuscaloosa in November, and a week or two later ends up committing to Alabama. Which, let me tell you something: when these kids, especially kids from Baton Rouge or Auburn with Rashaan Evans, they commit to Alabama, I mean, they are. It's almost like they are banished.
Never come back to Louisiana.
You are public enemy number one. You're a guy who is not going to have any success because you went to another school, especially a rival school. You left your hometown team in the dust, but at the same time, these kids are making decisions that they feel like are going to impact the rest of their lives and get them to where they want to go. Obviously, it was the best decision for Rashaan Evans, best decision for Dylan Moses. People want to say, oh, well, LSU won the national championship last year. He could have won a national championship there. Well, he's won a national championship at Alabama. He's on the best team in the country right now, potentially going to win another one, if all goes according to plan for Alabama. So I think he's made the right decision in terms of his future. In LSU, things are struggling down there right now.
Yeah. And let me stop you right there. And that's kind of where my next point is. You talk about things are struggling right now at LSU. Ed Orgeron won the national championship last year. This year has been entirely different. You've got some NCAA issues. You have some off the field criminal issues that were highlighted by newspaper reports, mass transfers and opt-outs, a 55-17 loss to arch rival Alabama last week. How's that going to translate into the recruiting? And also, what's the latest on Arik Gilbert, the 5-star tight end? Because rumors are that he's going to transfer out, and Andrew Bone's going to help us get to the bottom of all of this stuff. I want to remind you guys, though, before we get into it, thumbs up if you're watching, subscribe to our channel, Bama Insider on YouTube. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, always go to Bama Insider for the latest Alabama news. We've got podcasts, whether it be on current players, obviously National Signing Day coming up. We'll have you covered there as well. He's Andrew Bone, and I'm Mick Gillispie. All right, let's talk about Arik Gilbert, the star freshman. Is he leaving LSU?
Well, trouble on the bayou. I think that, with Arik Gilbert right now, it certainly seems that way. I mean, he's opted out for the rest of the season. Does that mean he's going to transfer? We don't know. I mean, he hasn't not entered the transfer portal just yet, but it certainly seems that that's going to happen. I mean, things just aren't pretty down at LSU right now. It seems like something new comes out every single week, almost every single day. And, there's a lot of uncertainty down there right now. Is Coach Orgeron even going to be the head coach, there in a couple of years? The offense has been, pretty putrid this season. I mean, you commit to a school, you sign with a school that you're watching, all of last season put up record numbers, and Heisman Trophy winners and Biletnikoff Award winners, and you're heavily recruited as an offensive player, and you see that, and you decide, all right, that's where I want to go to school. Now, I don't know if it's home. He said, the rumor is he's homesick. Is he really homesick, or does he not want to be a part of this? It seems like a sinking ship. I'm sure Coach Orgeron is trying to fix things, but there's a lot of patches that he's going to have to fix right now. And Arik Gilbert's a big piece right there, and that could really open up the gates for potentially even more kids wanting to leave, or even more kids not wanting to go to LSU because they're seeing star players. You're seeing star players opt out, but what if you start seeing players, try to get out of there, try to transfer? And I think that's what a lot of people are really paying close attention to right now. And in terms of Alabama, Alabama hasn't reached out to Arik Gilbert, and they have, frankly, they can't. They're not allowed to do that. That would be tampering. You cannot do that. I don't know if other schools have done that or not, but Alabama's not going to do that, and not going to get themselves in trouble with trying to get a freshman tight end to transfer to their school when he's not even in the transfer portal. Now, let's say he does enter the portal. It gives Alabama a little bit of room to try to recruit him and see if he'd be interested. But at the same time, we're not hearing that at all. We're hearing if he ends up getting going into the transfer portal, it's not going to be Alabama. Now, will it be Georgia? That's that seems to be the heavy rumor right now that's most likely. But he could potentially end up elsewhere. I just don't see it being Alabama at this time.
How about recruiting between Alabama and LSU and some of the targets that the Tigers have? I'm just going to go through a couple of names for you. Brian Thomas, receiver, 6'4", and a 4-star.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama loves this kid. They've held him in very high regard for a very long time. Elite playmaker. Plus, he's got great size. I mean, look at it, 6'4", 190 pounds. I've kind of compared him a little bit recently to Cam Sims, who's also from Louisiana, having a great year for the Washington Redskins. Actually, just got the game ball this past week after the Redskins beat the Steelers. So kind of similar, just size-wise, speed-wise, length, everything. So kind of been comparing him to Cam Sims. I like Alabama's chances with him. I think LSU's fading. I think they've been fading for a little while. I do think that probably the biggest challenger for Alabama right now with Thomas is Texas A&M. Now, he is not going to decide next week. He is going to wait it out until February. Now, I've been saying I will still keep an eye on him just because you never know. He may end up waking up on next Wednesday morning and saying, hey, I know where I want to go. Let me go ahead and make this decision, and let me go ahead and surprise everyone and go ahead and sign. That's always a possibility. But as of right now, from what we're hearing, he's going to wait until February to sign.
Another guy that we're keeping an eye on is Keanu Coate, another 4-star.
Yeah, Keno is a definitely an elite player. Had a great senior season, a little bit underrated. And I was talking to Mike Farrell about this last night. We both had a chance to watch Keno Coates' senior season highlights. Just incredibly impressive, very explosive edge rusher, gets into the backfield in a hurry, high potential. Committed to LSU this summer over Alabama. He was very high on Alabama this summer, but ends up committing to LSU instead. Alabama has continued to recruit him. Would not be surprised if we saw him. Now, I don't know if we're going to see a flip from him, but I would not be surprised if we saw him reopen his recruitment and kind of let it play out until signing day. So I would keep a very close eye on Keno. I think there's a very realistic chance that he ends up going elsewhere, and great player.
Yeah, big size too, 6'6", 225. Always need those big defensive ends. So, yeah, Keno Coate. How about Maason Smith? Let's talk about Maason Smith. He's another defensive tackle, 6'5", almost 300 pounds, and he's from Louisiana. He is a 5-star, and, I mean, he's been with LSU for a long time.
this is the #1 player in the country. The guy that everybody wants. Could really make a recruiting class. Alabama's having a historic recruiting class right now. 13 guys in its class right now, currently members of the Rivals 100. Adding Maason Smith would be unbelievable for Alabama. And this is a guy who has visited Alabama several times in the past, but many people have just assumed it's going to be LSU. And I think with everything going on at LSU right now, it really just opens up the door for these other schools, specifically Alabama and Georgia. These are two schools that have been in it for a very long time with him. There's some confidence coming out of the Georgia side, but I also think that Alabama's got a very realistic chance to land him. Freddie Roach has done a great job recruiting him throughout the entire process. Alabama's first-year defensive line coach, but his relationship with Freddie Roach didn't start when Freddie became the defensive line coach at Alabama. That relationship's been going on since Freddie was at Ole Miss. I mean, they've had a very long-standing relationship. He's got a good relationship with Pete Golding. I think Alabama's very much in play for him. I would not rule him out at all in terms of potentially signing with Alabama. Next week's going to be interesting because, what else is going to come out about LSU? Are they going to continue to fade with some of these top-end guys going down the home stretch? I think it's very possible. And, everybody's just going to have to, decisions aren't being made this very moment. Decisions are going to be made next week. These guys have waited it out this long, and there's a reason for that because they weren't really sure what they were going to do. They're letting everybody get their last-minute recruiting pitches in. They're going to do their final due diligence on each school, try to find out every single thing they possibly can. They're going to do Zoom calls with every head coach. They're going to sit down with their families. They're going to pray about it. They're going to say, all right, this is the absolute best decision for me, for my family. Let's do it. And that's going to happen Monday or Tuesday of next week. I think most of these guys going into signing day will know what their, final decision is going to be. Now, sometimes it doesn't happen like that. I said this on our recruiting show on Tuesday night. Trent Richardson is a guy who held a press conference on his signing day. He was committed to Alabama, but he held a press conference to announce his decision. A lot of people were worried that he was going to end up flipping from Alabama to possibly Florida or possibly to LSU. And Trent told me in my book, The Road to Bama, great chapter on Trent, talking about his entire life and all the challenges that he faced. And, on signing day, he kind of woke up that morning knowing that he was going to go to Alabama. He was going to the press conference, ready to announce that decision. And he called Urban Meyer, Florida's head coach at the time. There you go. Florida's head coach at the time. And he just wanted to talk to him one more time. Just say, hey, coach, really appreciate it. Going to Alabama, that was in his mind when he, before he dialed that number. But then the phone started ringing and he told me, he said, if Urban Meyer would have answered the phone, there's no way I would have been able to tell him that I wasn't coming to Florida and that I was sticking with Alabama. I would have probably flipped my commitment from Alabama to Florida just because I was on the phone with Coach Meyer on my way to my announcement. Stuff like that happens. It doesn't happen often, but stuff like that happens. And that's what makes it very difficult to predict on a lot of these kids who waited out until signing day. Everybody wants us to know. Everybody says, you're a recruiting analyst. You got to know exactly where a kid's going to go to school. How do you not know where a kid's going to go to school? Because a kid doesn't know where he's going to go to school. His mind's being pulled in so many different directions. There's sometimes his family wants him to go, one place, and he wants to go to another, and he's got to have a voice of reason. What's he going to do? And Landon Collins. Landon Collins is another kid from Louisiana who, I'll never forget being at his announcement at the Under Armour All-America game, and he announces his commitment to Alabama while his mom's shaking her head no and putting up, saying she wants him to go to LSU and how LSU is the best school for him, blah, 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 blah. I mean, if you're watching that, you're thinking to yourself, there's no way this kid's going to end up signing with Alabama in a couple
Right.
of weeks. He's going to flip to LSU because that's where his mom wants him to go. And he ended up sticking with Alabama. But kids that take it down this long, they're tough to predict.
Yeah,
they are. I mean, and people think we try to create this drama, this unnecessary drama towards the end. And I don't know if I would even say the kids create the drama, because I really don't think they know. They're making this incredibly hard decision where they've been talking to these coaches for months, sometimes years, that they have these relationships with. They don't know what they want to do or how to tell a coach no. And sometimes they don't tell a coach no. They tell multiple coaches, yeah, coach, I'm going to announce to your school this morning, because he cannot tell them, sorry, I'm going elsewhere.
Right. Last guy we're going to talk about today, Sage Ryan, 5-star safety, has, is related to, I think, a cousin that coaches for LSU, Kevin Folk, right? The former running back. And then I remember seeing Folk, by the way, when he was at LSU as a running back, very good football player. But Alabama's been in the mix for him. Is there any chance that they could possibly flip his commitment?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think it's going to be tough just because of the relationships that he has, but you never know. I mean, he does have a cousin on LSU staff who's recruiting him, Kevin Falk, who you never know what he may be telling him. He may be saying, I don't think he's probably saying this, but you never know. Hey, you need to go somewhere else. This isn't good down here. You never know if he's telling him that, or if he's saying, hey, things are okay. Like, they're blowing it up in the media. You need to still come here. We don't know what's being said. So we do know that Alabama's still recruiting him. They're still talking. There's a chance. I think there's a very realistic chance that he could potentially flip to Alabama. And I think he's going to make a decision next week. So that's somebody that everybody's going to be paying very close attention to. But yeah, I mean, he's got strong family connections there. And I think that's probably a big reason for his original commitment to LSU over Alabama. But excuse me, it's not over at all with Sage Ryan in Alabama.
Next Wednesday, we're going to be on with a recruiting day, signing day special. You guys are going to want to hang out with us because, we're going to be here for all the ups and downs and twists and turns of National Signing Day, something that Andrew Bone over the years has been a part of many, many times. Thanks, Bone. Anything else before we bid everyone farewell?
I think that's it. It should be a fun, fun week. Well, I'd say week. It's going to be a fun, I guess a week, because Tumise Adelia is going to wait until next Thursday to announce his decision. So, we'll have a week to follow these, last remaining targets, at least for this early signing period. So it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of message board rumors going on for the next few days, and a lot of speculation. And just don't believe everything you hear. Once we kind of get closer to signing day, things start to become a little bit more clear. You're going to hear, this kid's favoring Alabama one day, then he's favoring Florida the next, then he's favoring, another school the next. You want to be the school that's in the driver's seat, the last few hours before he announces that decision, not the school that's in the driver's seat today. So it should be fun week, and we're really looking forward to it.
We appreciate all you guys who are watching or listening. If you're watching on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, of course, this is Alabama's Rivals channel. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate your time being here and invite you to come back next Thursday. Also, for those of you that have downloaded the podcast, we love you guys as well. And make sure you go to the Bama Insider channel, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out. We'll do this every Thursday. National Signing Day is coming up, at least the early period. So we got a ton of content that'll be on the site. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for watching.